Welcome to another episode of Mindful Drawing. This is the 37th sequence in this series, and it's exciting that every week I get a chance to sit down for at least one day in the morning and draw for half an hour or so, and share that with other people, so hopefully we can learn to communicate together in a creative act and bring some awareness to where we are midweek and how we're doing, and use the drawing as a way to let that out onto the page as an expression on a temporary medium that can just flow and then vanish once we are done. Or if you like what you draw in any of these classes, maybe you put it up on the internet, share it with me in the comments as a screenshot, or just give it to a family member that might like it and find some of your same joy that you do here in the creative acts. Come along with me this week as we explore creating our own kind of centering, finding a way to engage with where we are and explore how that reaches outward in our acts of communication, whether that be drawing, writing, or just talking to your friends and family. We'll do a quick little warm-up and then enter into a longer form drawing for about 20 minutes where we have a chance to really develop something from this repetitive sequence of breathing, engaging with our body and our mind, and bringing awareness to the space on the page. So let's go ahead and draw together. So let's go ahead and get into it and draw together. My partner Lauren shared a video with me earlier this week of like the puffer fish doing their little sand drawings in the bottom of the ocean. I thought it was super cool and made me think about an exercise around centering, since they kind of work in this really interesting way from the outside in, and you end up with a pattern that is very algorithmically derived based on like how sand and water currents settle. So I thought we could start with something there as a way to work in without an expected center and see kind of where we might end up. Just to get started, I'll do a little bit of a warm-up and pick a small piece of paper and start out at the edge, anywhere with the pencil, and just begin to find a line that can work its way towards the center, wherever you feel that might be, and establish that relationship on the page between the inside and the outside there, and then kind of working around from the perimeter and continuing to guide a line or curve towards that center, letting it wobble a little bit, as sometimes it's easier to get from one point to another with a little bit of a curve or wiggle, as we can correct along the course and still end up starting where we begin and ending where we intend with the drawing. I'm just creating a bit of a pie here, bringing things inward, getting familiar with my paper and my setup and my hand, and maybe letting the little playfulness of the warm-up start to inspire a bit of technique or feeling in my hand, and just continuing around, bringing, probably in most cases, the rectangle of the page into the point or center area of the openness. And we can maybe work around in the other direction. If you've been going clockwise, move to counterclockwise, or vice versa. Just warming up that shoulder and wrist, getting it involved as a starting point for bringing a bit of our attention to what centering might be for ourselves, as we can jump onto a larger canvas or a blank page, pick our favorite comfortable medium, and just begin to see how it might travel there directly, as in this warm-up exercise, or perhaps indirectly as an inspiration of the cuttlefish scenario. I think I am interested in this page just being an infinite canvas, so starting somewhere near the end and just letting things work their way towards the center, maybe with some concentric layering to give space to enter into a more meditative state through our breathing. Again, just by picking a place and letting a trajectory head towards the center. But when my breath runs out, picking up the pen and starting again somewhere along the edge. And letting a breath out towards the center. Breathing in, placing the pen, and breathing in towards the center. And by stopping after a short distance, we're giving a little bit of space, opening up some detachment from having to find that exact point right away, to know where we can have some center in ourselves, but leaving it a bit open to explore. And the spacing between the lines may be consistent to bring in a rhythm, or free and playful, to just breathe, pick up the pen, set it down, and draw towards some degree of center with the breath out. And as your body moves to different areas of the paper, maybe the extension or flex of the wrist changes, and that may adjust our movement relative to our breath, how far or near we can guide the pen. Perhaps it becomes challenging to reach, and you can switch to the other hand for a little while. Just engage those other parts of the mind and the body. And as our focus is more on this act of drawing inward, having attention to the breath, the pencil, and the hand in each stroke, and drifted away from where or what that center might be, and finding and defining what the space of the next layers of the drawing might become. And hopefully creating a bit of an open condition. I think I'll begin by just working around the generally circular-ish shape and picking up from existing lines and just letting them deviate and kind of drift further in. Some may be crowded, and so can be left behind or brought tightly in with their neighbors. Continuing to breathe with each stroke, finding a rhythm if that's one line per breath, or perhaps a couple. One new line per previous pen stroke or branches, converging inwards. but fading out. Letting the eye and the hand take advantage of the space that's already being formed by the artifacts of previous motion, inhabiting each new curve as its own potential moment, reaching in or searching for that somewhat elusive center space, but also creating its own shape within the context, filling in more density to the field and working its way around. Each tick part of a cycle, just a moment to inhabit, working my way back and forth in different directions, just to keep the arm kind of aware and engaged as it has to practice different moments, different movements each time, and not get too unmindful and caught up in just the repetition. Sometimes the space of the body is a space to enter and bring attention to where we are and how we are at a moment in the world. And as each one of these drawings starts just from making a mark or choosing a position or technique to begin to bring our attention to, their outcomes are often, for me at least, unexpected or unpredictable, and provide a place to kind of witness into how we might react to different visual stimulations or configurations. I'm finding here, as things approach this center, that I feel a bit of tightness or anticipation, perhaps a little concern with where will the next curve end up, when will they close each other off and no longer have room to engage. And this is a feeling of discomfort or concern with perhaps the composition and outcome. We can breathe into and reach back out and start in more open spaces and bring those in, where we have that room for our hand and our eye to maneuver, letting the breath stroke breathe into new spaces of the page, still guiding our hands and our mind towards a center, and perhaps witnessing the spectrum that exists there, that the collapse or compression to a single space, a single thinking, can bring both focus and anxiety. And letting, just like our breath, some of that attention oscillate from the very near to the very far, to look up and out and down and in. can be easy if your daily work involves the screen or the computer to spend a lot of time looking down and in, very detailed, focused, dense pixels of light beaming out into the eyes. And while there might be representations of layers and three-dimensional space provided in our desktops and our programs, the eye themselves don't really change their focus too much. They stay sharp and narrow. They don't give some space to breathe. And just like with our own oxygen in our own lungs, we want to let them look a little far, to refocus, to stretch and flex in and out, to keep them working well, as well as to provide that variation in perspective, a chance to recenter and see what we've been doing, and maybe ask a question of it, or just witness that it's happened, to have that space. Going from in to out and out to in. Breathing. Reminding ourselves to open up when we feel some tension or anxiety. To recognize it and give it a few breaths of space. And see how we want to re-engage with the moment, or maybe let it be for a little while. And with some time on the perimeter, you feel a little more loose, a little lighter, and feel ready to come back in and maybe go a little slower to engage with the density of the center. Perhaps release some of my anxiety about lines converging or meeting or overlapping even. To let go of what the drawing might be and just be absorbed in what it is now. In each successive stroke, reaching and opening. But if that space is too crowded, tight, or overwhelming, maybe switch the direction completely. Begin to draw out from there, to draw out from what forms in that center, to let it extend and expand back into the space around us. To highlight our patterns, perhaps to share some of what we find. As we disseminate our learnings and our practice, letting others into a space of a technique, a way of feeling and thinking that maybe guides us at our center. It opens up new possibilities, maybe new ways of thinking, or just communicating. And here each curve is a new word formed from the syntax of the lines, negotiating space and forming new territories. Perhaps after a time, eventually, a bit of meaning visually in the case of drawing, whether that's aesthetic and just a touching sensation when viewing a drawing from a distance, viewing a visual act from the outside, or perhaps it has some metaphor or reference, whether intended or discovered. And I think sometimes in my training and seeing the world in a design sense, but also often a very computational way, that in something like the inspiration of the pufferfish's mating display, I see the algorithms that people have studied from the natural world, governed usually by physics or chemistry interactions that repeat themselves in many different scenarios, in different beings, as that shared language, maybe a shared language of math. We can all recognize and appreciate because it affects us all. And I'm usually interested in the drawings as density accumulates through a time of just being here, being with the making of a stroke, with the following of a technique, with our breath and our body communicating outwards through a medium like the pen or pencil and the paper. That new shapes, regions begin to form. And then as my eyes come back from a space of kind of defocus, of just guides while I draw, kind of a picking of place, a starting with some degree of location to a reading of what might be emerging on the page. I see and search for cells, or closing in, or patterns. As we maybe zoom our eyes back out a little bit, blink a few times and let them take in what is happening on the page. Maybe share a little gratitude and amazement for how much information we can put down here in such a short time, just repeating and exploring, adapting, extending curves and lines, some heavy, some light, some close, others far, forming space. Without intention, but with awareness. And spending a few minutes maybe asking the drawing, what does it contain? Asking your more conscious self and your eyes. What do they see? And where might you enter into that space and just find some playful creativity now that the setup has been handled? We have a lot of room to search. What becomes the waves in the water that both forms and then dissipates? This moment of centering. Does the drawing sit on the desk for a few days and fade, or get items laid over it, smudged and smeared around? Do we turn it over and just keep drawing on the back to let it continue to transform? Or put it away and maybe start again from it another day as it becomes a new display? I think I might take mine and dip it in the sink and see what happens. It could be a fun exercise. Maybe that's a nice thing to consider doing, is like the sand mandalas or the fish on the bottom of the sea, to just let these short creations be what they are while you're there, and the rest to flutter out, ink into the void, and become a place to start again. That's our exploration for the day. I'm excited that you're able to join us watching it live or coming to it later on YouTube, and just getting a chance to experience some mindful drawing as a way to enter into creativity or relaxation for your day. I really appreciate if you like the video to give it a thumbs up below, and maybe share it with a few friends or leave a comment to let me know how I could improve or what you'd like to see in some of the drawings as inspiration. Just like this week, where I explore something I saw from the pufferfish without actually representing it, but just taking it as an idea and thinking about how that might provide some techniques for a creative act. I encourage you to find those inspirations out there, whatever they may be, and let them guide you as you give yourself a little space for that self-care and creativity each day. Have a wonderful week, and as always, draw well.